Big Sills. Unbelievable money that's being thrown around the defensive tackle position. Quentin Williams, $96 million. $25 million per guaranteed. Insane numbers. And now the defensive tackle position is becoming a premium position. Just follow the money. Look at what Javon Hargrave got. By the way, welcome aboard with us here. 14 days to training camp or 2 weeks out from the start of training camp. Huge money. And folks, 12 sacks, $25 million a year. Unbelievable numbers and money. Wow. The defensive tackle position is now a premium position like the corner and edge rushers, especially if you get an interior defensive tackle that can rush the passer. Hey, and for the record, this is where Jordan Davis needs to be. Now, he's the 3rd overall pick. Davis is the 13th pick. But when you're in one of those high premium picks like that, this is exactly what the Philadelphia Eagles were counting on when they drafted Jordan Davis out of the first round 2 years ago. They were counting on him to beat Quentin Williams. He's not. That is a premium, primetime defensive tackle that can give you 12 sacks, 55 total tackles, 28 hits on the quarterback. That's a premier defensive tackle. Premier. Highest paid DT in the league. Quentin Williams' numbers for the Jets. 16 games played, 12 sacks, 28 quarterback hits, 55 tackles, 2 forced fumbles, 4 pass deflections. That, my friends, is production. When you draft somebody in a premium pick, that's exactly what I'm looking for. Not 19 tackles and sporadic play. That's a primetime player in New York. Jordan Davis, you have the physical ability to do this. He just doesn't live up to it. And nor does he show the flashes of that. 65% of the defensive snaps played. That is absolute production. Holy cow. Dude, Quentin Williams? Would you take Quentin Williams right now over Aaron Donald? Yeah. Age? Production? Now, Donald's a superior pass rusher and a phenomenal pass rusher. But Quentin Williams is an overall great football player because he's productive in making tackles and he's great against the run. $66 million guaranteed to a defensive tackle. Still got to stop the run, don't you? 12 tackles for loss. First team All-Pro. Hey, Tone, how many years has Quentin Williams been in the league? How many years has this guy been in the league? Entering his 5th year. He's been in 4 years of production, going into his 5th year. Sorry, friends. Hey, Tone, do me a favor. Do you have his stats up? Because I'd like to know what he did in his first year with the Jets. Okay? I'd like to know what he did. By the way, the Jets had a good unit last year. Their defensive football team improved mightily. They did a great job last year defensively. Boy, the numbers are just getting bigger and bigger for the defensive tackle position. Absolutely insane. And first team All-Pro. You're talking about a 25-year-old guy right now entering his prime, and now he's getting primetime money. Okay? Just an absolutely sensational production number. Man, listen to that. 16 games. Year 1, 13 games played, 2.5 sacks, 26 tackles, 4 TFL, 6 quarterback hits, 1 pass deflection. kind of a tick up from Jordan Davis. 19 tackles, no sacks. He had 2.5 in 13 games. Kind of in the room. Kind of in the room. So here, let's be fair here to Jordan Davis. It's going to tell us, this third year is going to tell us, because I guarantee you, Quentin Williams started to improve each and every single year, especially when Robert Saleh got there from San Francisco. I guarantee you his production improved because the defensive talent around him improved. And that's always a factor too. More guys you play with that are better ball players, you're going to be able to play a lot better. Here's year 2. 13 games played, 7 sacks, 55 tackles, 10 TFLs, 14 QB hits. Let me say this to you. If Jordan Davis puts that kind of season together in 13 games, 7 sacks, 55 tackles, he's on his way. Because that's great production missing 3 games. So he'd have been a 10-sack guy, most likely 10 or 9, in a 16-game regular season. That's 13. Quentin Williams is now the new he's the new standard for where you want Jordan Davis. Year 3, 15 games, 6 sacks, 12 QB hits. I'll tell you what, look at that tackle number. Look at the tackle number. 55 tackles last year, first year, 26, second year, 55, third year, 53, 7 TFLs, those 10 tackles for losses, 4 tackles for losses, 12 a year ago. Man, he is one productive guy. You're hoping Jalen Carter looks like this. This is the kind of production you want to see Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis, I would imagine. These are big numbers for an interior defensive tackle. I guess because I'm not sitting there covering the Jets as much. Tone asked me a question. When you look at the defensive tackle position, you think there's more quality DTs today. I think there's more athletic defensive tackles. But I don't believe that the tackles today are asked to do the things that tackles in the past had to do, where you had to be good against the run. Like, I'll make a comparison to you, Tone, even more so. Like, do you think it's the walk of shame any longer in baseball if a guy strikes out 150 times? But if he hits 300 and gets you 40 home runs and 120 RBIs, and he strikes out 150 times like Mike Trout, that's not a big deal anymore, is it? When guys struck out back in the past, he's 25 years old, 6'3", 303 from Alabama. It's Quentin Williams. Years past, if you struck out 100 times, man, that was the walk of shame nobody wanted. Now it's not a big deal as long as you're being productive, right? That's kind of what you are today in the defensive tackle position. They want pass rushers at that spot. It's not so like Vince Wilfork making the Hall of Fame. I don't think Vince makes it because he doesn't have a ton of sacks. Vince Wilfork playing in Joe Green's era, he makes the Hall of Fame. They throw the ball more. You've got to be more of a pass rusher. You've got to be more a disruptor in tackles for losses, deflected passes, disruption. If you give up a ton of yards and a team runs the ball on you, Aaron Donald is notorious for that. He runs around blocks. He's notorious for that. That's not what he's asked to do any longer. He's just not asked to do that. So again, when Davis's numbers improve, you'll give credit to Carter being on the field. Of course I will. Better players around you. I just said that. And Josh Sweat improving. And Reddick getting to the quarterback. It all goes hand in hand. Hey, Bob, are you under some impression that if you play with shit players, you're going to be a good player and you're not going to suffer on a bad defense? Of course you're going to suffer on a bad defense. I'll give credit to Jalen Carter. Absolutely. But I'll also give credit to Jordan Davis if Carter has a banner rookie year. It's a team sport, dude. You need everybody, Bob. Hassan Reddick needed the guys to stop the run for him to be productive. Once they got Linville Joseph and Ndamukong Suh, he took off in the second half. Those guys get credit also for the production that he had. It's not a slap in the face to play with better guys. I mean, again, if we're talking tennis or boxing, that's a different conversation. We're talking about a team sport. You're trying to tell me you don't think if you got better linebackers and you got great linebacker play, and I'll even make this point to you. Dude, if those two tackles in front play great, say they have good seasons, say that Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis have great years, Nakobe Dean could be a Pro Bowler. Okay? He could be a Pro Bowler. Wow, Nicole Lynn negotiated the deal and just had a baby. Think about this for her, okay? It's almost a $100 million deal. She gets 5% of that. She gets 5% of that deal. And she gets 5% of the Jalen Hurts deal. What a gangster, man. And I mean that with due respect. And you know what, too? She is the coolest negotiator, Nicole Lynn, I've ever seen. I didn't know Quentin Williams was up for a new deal. Did you? I couldn't believe the no noise that was made in the Jalen Hurts contract. Dude, what an absolute professional job you're doing when it comes to negotiating these contracts without all the kind of noise you hear mostly from these agents. That's great. Every single player is going to start gravitating to her because you know why? You're not trying to piss your employer off. You're just trying to get a deal done that's fair and market value. That's absolutely awesome. It's a great negotiating deal. Super job, Nicole. You are absolutely putting yourself, if you haven't already, amongst the elites when it comes to negotiating these contracts. Clutch Sports, man, they have an absolute shark in the tank there now. It's fantastic. Fantastic, and kudos to you. That's a great job, man. And he deserves it. The numbers are enormous. Okay? Big Sills needs a chat to Broadcast X. Hey, if you guys were barking at me, man, that'd be really fun. It would be. Dan, would you trade Quez Watkins in a pick for Jamal Agnew, who could be a great number 3 and a returner? Let's see how the exhibition season goes, 85. Okay, hey, I want to give Quez a shot. I want to give Quez Watkins a shot. Okay, I do. She's on Clutch Sports, Dozy, yes. Fantastic. I'll tell you what, man. I cannot wait to see Jordan Davis play this year, and I can't wait to see Jalen Carter play. We are going to have so much fun watching these guys either produce or have to get better or make comments. Remember something in the end when we're going to talk about athletes this year or we're going to talk about your particular favorite Eagle. No one's wishing anything. I don't wish failure for Jordan Davis. Why would I? Doesn't seem like he's a bad guy. He wants to be an Eagle. He's a good dude. I have no issues with him. Okay, none. I see a lot of people like him. He's happy. He jokes around. How do you root against that? You root against assholes. You don't root against people who are good dudes. At least I don't. And I'm never jealous over money or anything. Dude, I'm hoping he has a great year. If he has a great year, my show will benefit. Don't you get that? You know, it's crazy how people think that I wish certain guys because I'm critical of them that they fail. That's old school radio bullshit. Why would I want to wish a guy not to have a good year so you tune out because you don't want to hear it anymore? Why would I want that? Why would I want you to tune a show off because it's so negative because the guy's not? Would you guys still be here with me if I was still banging on a negative narrative about Jalen Hurts and Jalen Hurts had a great year like he did a year ago? You would look at me and go, you have no integrity of what you're watching. You're lying. The player has made it possible for us to continue to evaluate. Look at Carson Wentz, for instance. There's really not much to evaluate any longer, except this. Here's the new story with Wentz. Can he turn his career around? Can he turn his? That's where Carson is. And here's the one thing you want to do when it comes to Jalen Hurts. Can he continue to get better? That's what we're looking at. Okay? That's exactly what we're looking at. Neil, appreciate you coming aboard. Thank you. Did anybody, before we get into the topics, by the way, we've been going into position rooms, and we're going to look at the Kansas City Chiefs because that's your Week 11 opponent. You guys have a bye in the Week 10 of the NFL season this year. So we went to Week 11. We're looking at the world champion Kansas City Chiefs here in a couple minutes, and we're going to look at the offensive line. I said something yesterday about you guys. I think you have the best cornerback room in the National Football League in depth and with your duo. I think the Jets are there. I think the Dolphins are there. Maybe the Cowboys. And if you look at it, the Eagles have a really great cornerback room. We talk safety, a lot of question marks there, a lot of question marks up the middle. Okay? Ton of question marks up the middle. But we're going to look at that here in a minute. So last night, the ESPYs were on. I've never watched an episode of the ESPYs. I've never watched it. I don't get the award. I don't know if it's a sports award, if it's a political award. I really don't know what it is. It's to promote ESPN. And the one thing out there, too, that came out of that whole thing was LeBron James telling us he's coming back. Let me say this about LeBron. I know he got heat for it today because he's gracing us with his presence and his greatness for another year. Okay. So his bedside manner sucks. The only thing I'll say about LeBron James compared to guys like Steph Curry or guys like Michael Jordan, man, doesn't it just seem he forces everything in his life? He's such an insecure dude, and there's no reason to be. You have no reason to be insecure here about this. Bro, you're one of the greatest, if not the top two greatest players in the league. Some would debate you're the greatest. What the hell else do you have to do? You don't have to let everyone know that you think you're the greatest. Let others make that assessment about you when they put down all the numbers on a table and look at. Let them say it. Let them say how great you are. I've never heard Michael Jordan ever talk about him being the greatest of all time. I've heard Michael Jordan say, it's not a fair question because I never played against Russell. I never played against Wilt. That's how he defines it because he respects the sport. LeBron has been chasing the ghost of Jordan and really Kobe since he came into the league, and there was no need for it. Everything became forced. That's why a guy like Howard Eskin calls him LaFraud. Because you know why? It's not that his game is a fraud. He is. And he's probably a great dude. But you force others' hand when you start walking around telling everyone how great you are. Bro, everyone sees it. Everyone knows how great you are. But he does more harm to his legacy than anybody in sports. Would you not agree? LeBron does more harm to his legacy than anyone with some of the things he says and some of the actions he has. Hey, by the way, you know how I look at that? And Tone, I'll tell you what, how everybody ripped him when he says, I'm taking my talents to Miami. LeBron James made that happen for Tom Brady to go to Tampa without him getting killed on that. He made sports and athletes mobile. He was the first guy to take the slings and arrows in that, where it used to be taboo if you went somewhere else because you didn't finish a deal. LeBron did that. That's his legacy. LeBron James, outside of the great player he is, his legacy is if the organization is not doing enough and not building around you, you have every right to leave. That's his legacy. But dude, you forced everything. And you do so much harm to yourself. Let it go. Nobody needed to hear that dumb shit last night. Nobody in the right mind had a thought you were retiring. Just go play. And once again, Disney has ESPY awards when they got to fire 7,000 people. Talk about the stupidest thing you could do and self-serving thing you could do in a time when your company is hemorrhaging money. ESPN's dying. And I guarantee you, it's killing the Disney stock. 2 years from now, ESPN will not be part of Disney. You watch, they'll spin it off because it's losing too much money. In 10 years, they've lost 20 million viewers. Dude, come on. Nobody's watching that network anymore. They got great college football. Game day's awesome. PTI is still the best show on that network. I mean, hey, and know this. Big Sil's worked on Wall Street. You can't keep hemorrhaging money and losing money like that. Just like CBS, they spun off CBS Radio because it was killing the stock. It was killing Viacom stock. Les Moonves came on my program, on my radio program about 4 years ago. He was the chairman of Viacom and came off and said, we're spinning off radio because radio is absolutely killing us right now. Okay? So we'll see. All right. Yeah, by the way, ESPN Plus with UFC. Yeah, get this. UFC got paid. Nobody signed up for ESPN Plus. Nobody signed up for ESPN Plus. It's a dying website. Like that CNN Plus thing that died. Nobody signed up for ESPN Plus. $5 a month. Sure. Okay. All right. So let's get into, by the way, Philly 500, 4:30, we will have him on. Kansas City Chiefs, Andy Reid. What's your take with that team going into the 2023 campaign? 14 days out from the start of training camp. What do you see with them? How do you look at Kansas City as they try to repeat as Super Bowl champions? Coming off what has been a pretty remarkable year for Patrick Mahomes. How do you look at the Kansas City Chiefs? Repeat? Twist, thank you, my friend. How do you look at Kansas City as they continue this run? They're in a conversation to repeat as Super Bowl champions. They're the kings of the hill. Tone's under the he's under the thought process, you're the king until somebody knocks you off. Okay? Quan goes, I can't even get a handle on the Eagles. We're getting there. Chiefs are bungles, Twist says. Team got better all around, Chiefs. That's the team to beat, says Mateo. Okay. Let me give you my takeaway. 2023 World Champion Kansas City Chiefs. 2 weeks out from them also starting training camp. I feel like they're like the Steelers at the end of the 70s. Man, that Steeler team was so good 4 and 6 years. All those Hall of Famers. There's not Hall of Famers on that team. There's 2 guys, potentially 3 guys that could be Hall of Famers. That's on that Chiefs team. Let me get into it here. Here's my takeaway. And when I write this down, and I do most of this at night, I put some real thought into this here. The Chiefs are on the verge of a dynasty. 5 straight AFC title games, 2 Lombardis. It's the greatest era of, how about this? What's crazy about what Andy Reid and Veach have done in Kansas City for a enormously rich in history football program / franchise. This is the greatest era of Kansas City Chief football in the franchise's history, going all the way back to Lamar Hunt. It's the greatest. They went to 2 Super Bowls back in the early days when they first made the move over from the AFL to the NFL. Hank Stram was the head coach. They had some really fine ball players and a ton. I would even say this, they had more Hall of Fame football players during that era than what Mahomes has now. But this is the greatest era in the history of Kansas City football. They've got to make some moves. Orlando Brown's no longer there, so they brought in Donovan Smith, Jawan Taylor. These guys are going to have to protect Patrick Mahomes. I would say this, that Rashee Rice has to step up. I didn't really think that he played that well at wide receiver for Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid last year. They've got to get more production out of the wide receiver room. Get this, and that's in light of what Mahomes did a year ago, broke the single-season yardage number and threw for 44 touchdowns, which is even more insane. Steve Spagnuolo is an outstanding defensive coordinator. In my opinion, he was one of the reasons why the Chiefs beat the Eagles in the Super Bowl in the second half of the year, or second half of the game, I should say, and especially into the fourth quarter. He should get another shot at being a head football coach in the NFL because he's done a whale of a job in Kansas City. I mean, as one of the better defensive coordinators in the NFL, he has put his mark on that as being, I would say this to you, Steve Spagnuolo. I mean, is there a better D coordinator in the NFL than him right now? Maybe the guy in New England. He's the only other guy. This guy's got a couple Super Bowl rings now. He's been in a great organization. He's got a great coaching staff. He's the preeminent defensive coordinator in the NFL right now. So think about what Kansas City has. They have the best D coordinator in the NFL, and they have the best head coaching play caller in the NFL. That's significant, okay? Which means what? You're never going to outcoach them. You're never going to outcoach Kansas City, and you're never going to outprepare them. So you can't, like, when folks go like this, oh, there were only a handful of 3-and-outs in the Super Bowl for the Eagles. That's too many. You can't beat. You're not on the same thinking process. Your coaching staff compared to the Eagle coaching or to the Chief coaching staff in Philly is night and day. It's JV varsity. You're not going to have more 3-and-outs in Kansas City and beat Kansas City. You're just not. Your coordinator on defense is in training wheels. Your offensive coordinator in Philadelphia is in training wheels. You got 2 of the greatest coaches in NFL history in Kansas City. You're not beating that team unless you play A+ and error-free football. You can't put the ball on the ground and have a scoop and score. Here's how the Eagles lost that game. Reid had his best coaching in the second half of that Super Bowl. You had a scoop and score, and you had too many 3-and-outs in the second half. And they beat you and came back from 10 down. You can't do that to them. And get this, once again, and you had the better team. Okay? And you had a better team. Can't do that to them. You can't. Philly goes 4-4, says Sills. All that said, Sills, Eagles had the game won. They were outcoached. They were outcoached in the back end of that game. Philly, you were never with 3-and-outs and a scoop and score. You're not beating them. You're not beating that team. That's how you have to play against, and they're inferior to you in a lineup. If you took the top 10 Eagles and the top 10 Kansas City Chiefs, I guarantee you, everyone to a man would go, I'll take the Eagles. But when you have Spagnuolo and you have Reed and you have Mahomes, you're not beating that. Callie Green goes 3 points. You're not beating that. You've played him 2 times in a row. Your quarterback has put up bigger numbers than Mahomes, and you were still run off the field. In the first, he ran for 238 yards at your barn. He outcoached you in that game, and Reed outcoached you in the second half of the Super Bowl. You're not beating them. 3 points. Dude, all you need is 1. All you need is 1 point. You don't need 50 points. You need 1. Not 3, 1 to win a ball game. Beaten. The coaching staff is superior. And they beat you 2 years in a row. Like I said yesterday, that dumbass comment by Dallas Goedert, if we played 10 times in a row, they'd win 10 out of 10. Well, is that from now? Or are you excusing the last 2 times you played them? One of the absolute stupidest comments that an Eagle player has made in the offseason was that guy. Dude, shut up. They've beaten you 2 years in a row. And in one of those games, they beat you in your barn and they beat you at your own game. They ran the ball. Give me a break. That's reality. That's not fantasy. That's reality. JM says that comment was taken out of context when someone says if we played them 10 out of 10, we beat them. Yeah, okay. Sure it was. All right. Matt Nagy now takes over for Eric Bieniemy. Matt Nagy's a good play caller. He's just, well, he was the NFL Coach of the Year up in Chicago. Mitchell Trubisky had a winning record, but it's Chicago. You're not going to succeed as a coach in Chicago. Matt Eberflus will be fired at the end of this year. Okay? He'll be fired at the end of this year. So to be a head coach right now in Chicago or the 2 things you don't want to be in Chicago is a coach or the quarterback because you have no chance of success. Okay? So Nagy now will get another opportunity. It'll be status quo. Go get me a cup of coffee. He'll help design the offense. He'll be on the sidelines when Mahomes comes over to the sidelines, and they'll go over on the tablet what he's seeing. Reed will come over and go, what do you like? It'll probably be status quo. Nothing will change. There's no different voices in his ear. I'm talking Mahomes. So the offense should still stay on par. They led the National League in scoring and in yardage a year ago with lesser players and went 14-3. Can you imagine that? So you couldn't I don't think they had a 1,000-yard wideout. Did they, Tone? They didn't have 1,000-yard. Wait a minute. So you guys had 2,000-yard wideouts? They had none. And got to the Super Bowl and won it. That shows you how much the gap is between him and Hurts. That guy doesn't need playmakers. He is the playmaker. He's the playmaker. He needs the tight end and Reed. That's all he needs. That's why that guy, and by the way, it's not just Jalen that gap is wide. I think the gap is so wide from him to every other quarterback in the league, it's wider than when Brady and Manning were in the league at the same time. You know, you could go back and forth a couple of years and go, man, Manning may have been better. That's never been the case here. And it's not as great as Burrow is. And Burrow's beaten them. I still think the kid Mahomes is just head and heels better. He's just a better player. And that gap is so wide, man. Like, it's closer between 2-9 and 2-10 in the top 10 quarterbacks than it is between 1 and 2. Am I wrong? That guy is, I mean, his resume, 5 years in a row, you're in the conference title game. You got three AFC championship rings, 2 Super Bowl rings. I don't know what else to say. And you got the record for the most passing yards, and the touchdowns are incredible. What else is there to be said? I mean, unbelievable. And by the way, Veach didn't find him. It was John Dorsey. So Veach and Reed don't get credit for him. It was John Dorsey that set that up and did the evaluation on Patrick Mahomes. Nobody saw this when he was at Texas Tech. You know, they thought he was a project when he came out, if you remember right. Threw a lot. I don't think they won anything down there. Did Mahomes ever have a winning record at Texas Tech? I don't even know if he had a winning record. They just didn't win a lot. And so when he came into the league, everyone was like, he's really athletic. You know, that's code for, well, he's a project. You see, there's a difference between being Patrick Mahomes and Anthony Richardson. I don't think shit Anthony Richardson. Mahomes, you kind of saw that he had an arm. Okay? 85 goes, Dan, do you think the Chiefs' defense is the weak link this year? No, because the coordinator will figure it out. Get this. Figure this out. And it's a great question. Okay? It's a great question. But understand this. You had the shittier coordinator in that Super Bowl, but the more talent. Kansas City had the lesser talent and the better coordinator. Coaching matters in the NFL, and it mattered in the Super Bowl. They overcame some of their deficiencies. They started 2 rookie corners against you versus your experienced corners who ran into one another. That was coaching. That's coaching. When you got corners and DBs running into each other in the fourth quarter because they're doing crossing routes on you and you can't pick it up or figure it out, that's coaching. That's coaching. When you got guys running into another. Okay? Totally. I don't see... Chuck goes, I don't see the Chiefs taking a step back on D. They let a few guys go who played over their heads in the Super Bowl. Chuck, I would say that they got a couple defensive edge rushers in there that got to step up a little bit as well. That's right. Jeffy, 6 rookies on defense beat the Eagles, and they're great offense, supposedly. 6 rookies. 6 rookies were on defense, and they stopped you. It's the quarterback and the coaches. You don't want to admit it. Your coaching staff was JV in that game. Was JV. Every position you had better, except tight end and quarterback and coach. You had a better defense. You had better pass rushers. You had a better group of corners. You had a better running back. You had a superior O-line. Didn't matter. You got beat. Didn't matter. They outcoached you. And you made mistakes in the game. And now we're hearing excuses in the game. Here's the one thing I will say, though, about Kansas City. Here's the one thing I will say about KC. I don't see a ton of depth. Elaine, how are you? Thank you. I don't see a ton of depth that they have on. So how many losses can they sustain on defense if guys go down? Mahomes can only throw you out of trouble so much. Okay? They're not an exceptionally deep team. It's clearly the quarterback and tight end show. There's no question that the Chiefs will be the number one offense in the NFL again, barring any injuries. And I think if they can keep that in the top 10, Chiefs are going to be a Super Bowl contender once again. And personally, in my opinion, I think they're going to have a tougher putt in the AFC. It's going to be tougher to win the AFC than the Super Bowl this year, and I've said that. You got to go through a bunch of great quarterbacks this year in the AFC. It's about 13, 14 deep, and teams that you're going to have to really have your A game all the time. And plus, you're the hunted now because you are the one with the bullseye on your chest. You've been that way for 5 years, but they've handled it. Andy Reid has been a better coach since he left Philadelphia. He wouldn't have made the Hall of Fame with what he did in Philly. But what he's added to what he did in Philly, he is a slam dunk now. 22, what it is now, postseason wins. I think he's second all time to Belichick. Belichick's got 34. Can he catch him? Maybe. I think Andy, with this quarterback, has learned to be patient. Mahomes had to be patient. I don't think Andy has as structured of an offense in Kansas City. You know what? Would you agree, Tone, after watching Andy Reid, the way he coached, there were more guardrails in Philadelphia for McNabb than there are, in my opinion, for Mahomes in Kansas City. I think Andy lets Mahomes be Mahomes. I think you kind of put some guardrails on McNabb because one thing I wish McNabb did more, I thought McNabb should have ran even later in his career. But McNabb stopped running, and that was a key component of his game early on. But as he got older, he stopped running. And I think that took a little bit away from him in his game in Philadelphia. And that's when I think Philly started coming back a little more, was that he took that component where teams weren't so afraid any longer of him getting out in the perimeter. McNabb early on, in his early part of his career, he was awesome in getting out in the perimeter and running on the run and throwing on the run. He was like Rodgers, man. He had a lot of Aaron Rodgers in him. But then that went away. And there's no doubt, I agree with Tone. I think Mahomes is bringing the best out of him. You know, the key with Mahomes here is you got to pull him off the ledge. You got to keep him kind of controlled a little more. And that's a good thing. Tone says McNabb stopped running because he wanted to dispel the athletic black quarterback stigma. Jesus, so you were worried about social justice instead of winning games? But if I was him, I would have never changed my game. Screw the doubters. Really, what's that got to do with football? That's dumb. I mean, hey, I don't want them to look at me as a black quarterback because I run. What is that? I'm never going to tell Jalen Hurts to stop running. I agree with that philosophy. I want Jalen Hurts just to be as smart as he possibly can and protect himself running. Because Jalen Hurts is not going to win a Super Bowl if he stops running. Okay? Every Eagle fan will tell you we were pissed when McNabb stopped running. You could tell he didn't have the same, pacing on the ball to his game. It's absolutely true. Dude, hey, Jeffy, when he was at Syracuse and he was torching Miami and he was running around the way he was, I was like this, holy shit, this guy's going to be undefensible. And with Reed's play calling, I really do believe that they should have did a little more in the wide receiver position. They were great at tight end during his era. Plus you had Westbrook, who's an absolute spectacular player. But I thought your wide receivers, D-Jack was okay. He was a good player. But he wasn't – I mean, if McNabb had the receivers that Jalen has right now, that would have been a different story, and McNabb's career would have been different if they would have had that kind of talent during his time, in my opinion. And he did get hurt. He did. Sills, come on and try to understand McNabb like most black quarterbacks wanted to see the great athlete. Philly, it's true. You're right. That's why I always start with this one, Philly. I never say this about a black quarterback because anybody who always does this when they're evaluating somebody like Anthony Richardson, okay, to me, is he smart? And to me, Jalen Hurts is one of the smartest quarterbacks in the National Football League. I don't think the guy in Buffalo is all that smart. Because if he was, he wouldn't be taking the pounding he's taking. I don't think that guy in Buffalo is that smart. At times, I don't think Lamar Jackson's that smart. Dude, I want to play 17 games. I got to be there 17 weeks. Winning first down, hey, getting a first down is not as important as me lining up next week. That's not as important. And by the way, look, you're listening to an Italian guy and a white guy give a white guy's perspective on that notion. It's a fair comment. It's a fair comment. But the highest paid players in the game today, the majority are all African American. So we're beyond this now. At least in the context of, can people play the position like the racist comments and racist views people had back in the day about black quarterbacks? When you're paying people, that stuff goes away. Because at the end of the day, follow the money. Okay? This comes down, and I get it. Hey, I don't want anyone to think because if I'm running, that means they think that I'm just a black quarterback because I'm an athlete. No, man. It's about winning ball games. But look, that's wasted. That's wasted energy. Okay? Look at Lamar. I mean, look at JM. Lamar isn't smart because he's black. Who said that? He's not smart because he gets banged up. Holy cow. Dude, stop talking to me. I'm going to bar your ass. That's the kind of shit that people post that make things up. Did you ever hear me say that the reason that Lamar Jackson was not good was because he's black? I said he's not smart because he doesn't think about playing the next week. I feel bad for you, dude. If you've been on here watching me all these years, okay, and you've been listening to me, and you thought that I said that, I'm not going to have a conversation with you again. Because that's not something you and I will ever. I feel bad now. Because you know why, JM? That's not cool. All right. Let's get into the Eagle offensive line. Okay? Yesterday, we talked about the cornerback position. And I gave you guys kudos on being the best room, I think, in the National Football League, okay? Let's do this. The Eagle offensive line. This is going to be an absolute. Okay, JM. It's all good. I get sensitive on that, JM. You have to excuse me because people make things up. JM, all good. I don't mean to single you out like that. I get a little sensitive on that. Okay? Neil Wright. Hey, JM. Let's all move on. Okay? Big smiles.